Now that Major League Baseball's trade deadline has officially passed on Tuesday, we have a bunch of teams that have won the deadline and lost the trade deadline, which means that we got to talk about them. We got to analyze every team's deadline and the moves they made and figure out who won this thing and who lost this thing, because some teams got a great return for players and acquired some all-stars, while other teams kind of didn't do anything at all and disappointed a lot. Hey, y'all, it's Nick from Undefeated Productions, and welcome back to the 3-2 Pitch, the podcast where me and not Drew today. We don't got Drew today. We got my buddy Aidan. He's from Missouri. Went to some games with him. Actually, never gone to a game with him. We went to some concerts with him. And how you doing? Welcome to the show.
Doing pretty good. Ready to talk about this deadline. A lot of stuff happened. It's been fun recently.
Yeah, for sure. You want to tell everyone who your favorite teams are?
So I'm from St. Louis, so naturally I have some connection to the Cardinals, but my favorite team's the Royals, unfortunately. Um, just swept the Mets though, so life's good right now, but until tomorrow when we lose again.
So yeah, I think both of those teams, your favorite teams, are on this list today, and they're both on opposite sides of our list. So how we're gonna do this is we got a list of 6 losing teams at the deadline and 6 winning teams. All the other teams are gonna fall somewhere in the middle, and likely we're not gonna talk about them today because they had probably an average of slightly above average, slightly below average deadline. These are the worst of the worst and the best of the best. We're gonna kind of bounce it back and forth here. And we're going to start it off with the Kansas City Royals. They're losers at the deadline. They had so many more pieces. I feel like they're always losers at this deadline. And how do you feel about the deadline as a Royals fan?
With us and deadlines, it never ends well because, like you said, we don't sell our players early enough in their career. You look at Whit Merrifield, probably should have traded him 4 or 5 years ago. We ended up trading him last year, and he was already in his 30s. So, like, we waited way too long to get rid of him when we know we're not going to contend. I feel like we need to start trading pieces earlier than what we do. I mean, our front office, and it's a brand new front office, so I give them a little bit of a break. But other than that, like, we have to change something with how we do this because it never ends well.
You guys were listening to offers on Salvador Perez, I know, at this deadline, a bunch of your other relievers. You guys were listening to offers on Salvador Perez, a bunch of your other relievers, and you guys ultimately settled for trading Nicky Lopez to the Braves in exchange for Taylor Hearn, which was acquired from the Rangers in exchange for cash considerations. That was kind of a just trash trade for you guys. You got Henry Williams for Scott Barlow, and you traded Chapman way before the deadline and really didn't get a whole lot for him. Considering how many players you guys have on your roster that you could have moved and the way you've handled deadlines in the past, I mean, Ryan O'Hearn, you just traded for nothing. But yeah, overall for the Royals, you guys had a trash deadline. I don't understand what you guys do. And I mean, you guys could have, you guys need to trade players. You guys clearly are like the worst team in baseball, if not second worst to the A's. Figure something out. The front office needs to change. Swinging over to the National League Central, we're going to talk about the Cincinnati Reds. They kind of didn't do a whole lot at the deadline. They acquired Sam Moll for just a prospect, and otherwise, it's practically the exact same thing. They were rumored on a bunch of guys, and how do you think the Reds are going to do post deadline without making many moves?
Going into the deadline, I really thought they were going to go after some pitching. That's their weak spot at this point is they don't have the arms to make a run. So I really thought they were going to do that. I don't quite understand why they didn't go after some pitchers. I mean, like the Tigers trading Michael Lorenzen to the Phillies, they could have probably swooped in and got him. And you look at today's first outing for him, he went 8 innings. So I mean, he's a good pitcher. I don't know quite. That's someone I feel like they could have easily gotten. Tried to get Montgomery from the Cardinals or Flaherty. I don't get why they didn't get pitching. They need it.
It's weird because the Reds are at such a point where they can win the NL Central, and even now, I believe there's still like a half game. I mean, the wild card race in the National League, that is a doozy, man. That is so close all around. You need just anything, literally anything, a bat, a pitcher, a reliever, something. You guys got Sam Moll of all things. It's like that does not move the needle for me, and I think the Reds are a team that could end up falling out of the wild card race due to their lack of a good deadline. Another team that had quite the quiet deadline is the Minnesota Twins back in the AL Central, who are also leading their division and kind of didn't do anything. They didn't even make a single trade at the deadline. Dylan Floro for Jorge Lopez, who struggled. And outside of that, they did absolutely nothing.
Once again, it's same issue. They don't have pitching. The offense wasn't good last night. They usually have a somewhat decent offense when, especially when Buxton's healthy. Their key thing they want to build around him, but when he can't stay healthy, then you run into issues. Usually the offense there's fine. They have Paulo Lopez. Joe Ryan can be good. Sometimes he's off. Sometimes he's on. All depends on the night. Like they need more pitching. It's the same thing with the Reds. They don't have it. But what they way the AL Central is they're 500 right now and they're still leading the division. They can escape with doing nothing and still winning their division, but they're not doing anything in the playoffs.
Very confusing considering the fact that the Guardians of all teams did actually they did a decent amount. Twins really had a shot to go out and like grab a hold of the division and make some trades, and ultimately did not really do it. And that kind of surprised me. I don't know what they were doing. Their front office decided to stay quiet, and maybe that's what they believe. Like you said, they believe they can win the division without doing anything, and that's all they want to do. They just want to win the division. AL Central, trash division. Jumping over to some winners, probably one of the biggest winners and most active teams at the trade deadline, the Texas Rangers. I mean, they did a ton. They got Scherzer, they got Montgomery and Stratton, they got Chapman, they got Austin Hedges. They probably got a bunch of other guys that I'm totally forgetting about. I mean, they had one of the best deadlines.
Yeah, absolutely. Their mentality right now is kind of go for it this year. I don't really think they're super worried about years to come right now, which I feel like could be a mistake, especially if they don't get it this year. But they have the pitching to do it. They have the offense to do it. But if they don't do it this year, I think they might be in some trouble.
Yeah, and I think a big reason that they want to push for it this year is to get Bruce Bochy managing the American League in the All-Star game in their home stadium for the first All-Star game hosted there. I mean, the Rangers, they have such a good roster. I mean, they lost to Grom injury. Evaldi just went out. What do? They go get Max Scherzer, and what a tandem that is. I mean, they were on the Mets and they pitched together for like 2 weeks, and then boom, DeGrom leaves in free agency. Oh, hello, Max Scherzer's on the Rangers now. They get Jordan Montgomery. He's going to just add to that rotation. Chris Stratton, he's be good reliever. I mean, Austin Hedges, great game calling, great defensive catcher behind the plate. Aroldis Chapman's been an absolute stud for them. But overall, the Rangers, you had one of the best deadlines, and it's going to be interesting to see if they did enough to ultimately compete with the Astros going down the stretch at the deadline. And speaking of the Astros, they're our next team on this list. I mean, wow, they had a solid deadline as well. Kendall Graveman and Justin Verlander back. But I mean, those are some really impactful moves, both a part of your World Series core. They're back and they're going to push for the playoffs and compete with the Rangers in the division.
And one thing that kind of scares me about Graveman, though, is he was not amazing in Chicago. He was not the Kendall Graveman that the Astros know. I like getting him back for them because they like were familiar with him. They know what they're doing with him. I just don't know if he's going to be the same Graveman that we saw a few years ago. And with Verlander, he's Justin Verlander. I mean, you're very Malnau is still there. So I already have that connection with those two. I mean, I feel like he's just going to fit right back into that rotation right where he left off.
Now, do you think, in terms of Graveman, do you think going back to Houston is going to help him go back to and return from his form that when he was in Houston? Because the White Sox are absolutely terrible with pitchers.
Yeah, that's what I was going to touch on next. Was like White Sox don't develop pitchers very well and don't keep them up to standards like they should. So like same thing with Giolito. I think him going to LA will help him with his career.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, with the Astros, they have some special magic. As soon as they got Verlander, the same day they threw a no-no. Martin Maldonado's caught 3 no-hitters in his career, and I think that's like the most of any catcher.
Tied for second.
Tied for second most. That shows bats as catcher. We talk about Austin Hedges. It's not always the biggest thing. And sticking with the AL West theme, we're gonna talk about the third AL West team that won the trade deadline, arguably the most aggressive team and the team that made the most trades at the deadline, the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim. All right, the Angels at this deadline, they brought in a lot of guys. Lucas Giolito, Reynaldo Lopez, CJ Cron, Randall Grichuk, Dominic Leone, Mike Moustakas, and Eduardo Escobar. I believe that's all 8 guys they brought in. And I believe they have something like 12 or 13 first-round picks on their roster right now. I mean, it's absolutely crazy what they've built.
Yeah, I think kind of the biggest thing they're trying to do is keep Ohtani around with the free agency looming for him. They're trying to make a playoff push now to show that, hey, we can do this. and try and keep him to stick around. I mean, they have the two best players in MLB. I mean, that's just not even arguable at this point. The fact they haven't made the playoffs in like 5, 6 years now, 7 years maybe. It's been a while for them to make the playoffs. Absolute studs on their team. It's kind of disappointing. So I think they're trying to prove people wrong now and make it.
Yeah, and a big thing with the Angels and a lot of their trades is free agents after this year. That is a big problem for them. Giolito's a free agent. I believe Lopez is going to be a free agent. Brown's going to be a free agent. I think everyone they acquired is going to be a free agent after this year, along with Ohtani, along with I think a couple other guys on this roster. The Angels are going to have a problem this offseason. Jumping back over to disappointing teams, we got 3 more of them. Might as well bang them out before the end of the video. We have the New York Yankees. I mean, they made, I think, 2 moves the entire deadline. They got BP pitcher Spencer Howard from the Rangers and Kenyon Middleton, who's been probably league average this year, maybe a little bit worse.
Yeah, I don't quite understand what's going on up there with Cashman because they're last place in the AL East. I mean, if you're last place and you're the New York Yankees, you're making moves left and right. I don't know why they were so quiet. Some doesn't seem right up there in New York. I know last night the crowd started chanting "Fire Cashman" in the middle of the game. So I mean, I don't quite understand what's going on with that because they're used to success and they're just not having it.
Yeah, and for the Yankees, it's very weird because they were rumored the day of the deadline that they were listening to offers on other players that are free agents after this season. And then they just hold pat with them. And like you said, last place. I don't know if it impacts them the fact that they're above 500 by a couple games and they're just getting judged back from injury. But at this point, the Yankees aren't going to make the playoffs. They aren't. Their needle's not moving. They just lost Herman for the rest of the season for alcohol abuse of all things. I mean, what a season he's had. Sticky stuff suspension, then throws a perfect game, gives up 10 runs in a start, and then now suspended for the rest of the season for alcohol abuse. I mean, a domestic abuser in the past too. I mean, what a career he had. That is phew. F. You guys get an F. I hate the Yankees. I'm so glad you did nothing. And now one of my hometown teams, back in California, the San Francisco Giants, and their deadline, they got AJ Pollock, and they do absolutely nothing. They could have went out and addressed their rotation. And
I mean, AJ Pollock has shown in the past that he is a playoff guy. He's usually comes up clutch in the playoffs when in just the most random times. Like you never expect it. This dude will go hit a walk-off bomber or something, game 5 or whatever. So I think maybe that's what they're thinking is to try to get a guy that can do something for the playoffs. You don't have pitching, you're not even going to make it. So I feel like they should have gotten another starter, gotten some bullpen. I mean, they have Camilo Duvall. I mean, he's amazing, but he can't do everything out of the bullpen. You need more than one guy around him. I would have gone out and got another starter, a couple relievers, not just sit on Pollock.
yeah, I feel like the Giants are another one of those teams in the wild card race, and even in the division race, they're not too far out. And they kind of are just like, oh, like the Reds. I feel like we could just get like one fringe move and we can stay competitive, or like the Twins even. I mean, it's 2023. We look at what the Giants did in 2012 and their every other year. By the way, this is setting up to be another every other year of success for a half decade for the Giants. Talk about 2021 winning 100 games. Stunk last year. 2023 comes around. They're good again. So now expect odd years. I don't think they're going to do anything next year. 2025, though, watch out. The Giants are coming. I don't know, man. The Giants, I would have loved to see postseason baseball in San Francisco, but I'm glad the Mets are out of it because if the Mets and Giants are playing postseason baseball, I'd be losing a lot of money going to games. And then finally, another playoff contender that did practically nothing at the deadline. They traded one of their closing pitchers. Paul Sewald got dealt to the Diamondbacks for Josh Rojas, who's a fringe non-tender candidate, doesn't play every day. Dom Carzone, who's like 26 with no big league experience, and Ryan Bliss. Like, you're getting 3 guys for Sewald. I know the market was high, but I think you could have gotten more for Sewald.
Mariners have been struggling all year with their pitching. I don't get why you trade your closer away for 3 guys that aren't going to play very much for you because you pretty much have a set starting 9. Kind of same thing with what's going on here in St. Louis is like you have a good lineup. They're just not doing what they're supposed to do. Like on paper, I feel like they have one of the better lineups in the MLB, but they just don't show up like they're supposed to. pitching's been an issue with them too. I don't get why you don't at least try to get a pitcher back for Seawald and get like a couple young guys.
Yeah, and the Mariners, like I said, confusing. Like all the teams that lost, it's just confusing why they did nothing. This reminds me of 2021 when they sent Graveman to the Astros. They're like, oh, there's a good reliever market, and then just boom, they didn't do anything. So Mariners, I don't understand, man. Kicking it over, so we got 3 teams left in the video. We got some winners, starting off with the Arizona Diamondbacks, who got Paul Sewald, Tommy Pham. They got Jace Peterson and Peter Strzelecki for Andrew Chafin.
I really like them going out and getting Tommy Pham because they have good outfield, but they can't play every day. I mean, the body just can't do that. So Tommy Pham brings in another really good outfielder. I mean, his bat's solid. It's always been solid. His fielding's above average. I mean, he's a good outfielder. Carroll needs a break, throw Pham in there. McCarthy needs a break, throw him in. I think it's a good move for them.
Yeah, and it's very interesting. They traded a 17-year-old shortstop prospect for Pham, so it'll be interesting to see if he ends up biting them in the future. That has happened in the past. They get traded Jordan Alvarez, that you trade a very young player and he's then a stud in the big leagues. And
Tatis.
I mean, yeah, Tatis too. But I mean, like Peter Strzelecki has a ton of control. Jace Peterson, he's a solid addition. They did some good moves to fill some holes on their roster. I mean, Paul Sewald, and then they traded Chafin away. But control of Strzelecki beats out Chafin. I really like what the Diamondbacks did. They won the deadline. And then we got 2 sellers. We got one of your favorite teams and my favorite team. We got both of them. We're going to start off with the Cardinals because I got a lot to say about the Mets. What do you think about the Cardinals deadline? They traded away a bunch of guys and they got a bunch of prospects.
I do like what we did. A lot of it's all the free agent issues too. We got rid of all the guys that we're gonna have to dump or salary. It's basically salary dumps. What we did, like Paul DeYoung, trading him away. He had like a 7.5 million player option at the end of the year. Like we don't want to have to end up paying that. Hicks is going to be a free agent. We tried to negotiate a contract with him, fell through. So trade him over Toronto. Genesis Cabrera never was what he was supposed to be. Always has had control issues. So trading him, get prospects for him. Stratton and Montgomery and Sagisi last night hit 2 home runs down Springfield. So I mean, he's already showing that was a good move for us to get the young guys. We got a bunch of pitching prospects, that's been our struggle for years. We don't have pitching. You look at our lineup, top 5 lineup in baseball on paper. They don't show up like they should be, but pitching always ends up screwing us over somehow. I like what we're doing, trying to get pitching prospects that we can hopefully build in the future. Like we've been trying to get these pitching prospects for years, like trading a Rosarena for Liberatore. He never turned out. So I'm hoping one of these like 8 pitching prospects we got will work out.
Yeah, and it's very interesting. Like you said, you hit it on the head. They traded a bunch of free agents on expiring contracts and got a great return for all of them. You were in discussions to trade one of your outfielders, but ultimately didn't pull the trigger. Overall, the Cardinals, a bunch of rentals that were free agents after the season, may or may not have re-signed them. Really, really solid return.
Also, with trading DeYoung, this completely opens the door for Mason Wynn to take that job over at shortstop. And with the outfielders too, we don't have much in the future. Our next outfielder is going to be Chase Davis, the guy we just drafted this year. So might as well sit on our 4 right now because Carlson can sub in every day when you need him to. O'Neill, he's changed the stance up, and now he's looking a lot better than he was. And Newbar, he's good. He's a good outfielder, solid outfielder, everyday outfielder for us. And Jordan Walker, obviously, one of the best rookies this year.
And then jumping over to my favorite team, I'll probably go in-depth analysis on this, and we'll let Aidan touch on them if he wants. The Mets, okay, they trading away from the roster. Scherzer, Verlander, Mark Canha, Tommy Pham, David Robertson. There's probably some other guys they traded. Oh, Dominic Leone. Probably some other guys that I'm forgetting. They traded a lot of players away. And they ultimately brought in 4 top 100 prospects for them in Marco Vargas, Ryan Clifford, Drew Gilbert, and Luis Angel Acuna. All 4 of them are going to be well within the top 100 prospects. They also brought in Ronald Hernandez. They brought in a 17-year-old shortstop. They brought in Justin Jarvis. And then for Dominic Leone, we got the new number 23 prospect in our organization. It was number 9 in the Angels organization, Jeremiah Jackson. Oh, by the way, we got Landon Marceau and another Tyler Stewart from the Angels in exchange for Escobar. I mean, we got tons and tons of prospects that completely revamped the Mets system. And I mean, now our system's looking a lot better. And we talk about for the main three of the top 50 prospects, we got in exchange for actually all four of them. We got exchange for a 38-year-old, a 39-year-old, and a 40-year-old. I mean, we're talking about that return for that old players, and clearly it wasn't working out for the Mets. They've really just been struggling this season, and to actually pull the trigger and build a sustainable farm system, that is absolutely huge. And you're spending half of the contracts that were basically, I mean, you either hold on to these guys, miss the playoffs, be disappointed in it, pay them anyways, go next year and try again, trade them away. All the rest of the contract, you were going to pay them either way this year. Tank this year, get a top 10 pick so your pick doesn't fall 10 spots, rebuild the farm system entirely, set up a much better outlook for the future. I mean, what the Mets did is absolutely incredible. I love this deadline as a Mets fan. Aidan, how do you feel about it?
Like you're saying, get the old guys out and bring in the new, open the door for the future to look possible success in the next 3 or 4 years. With all those prospects you bring in, like Luis Angel Acuna, that dude's going to be a stud, hopefully. I don't think he's quite going to live up to Ronald. I mean, Ronald's amazing. I mean, that's hard to live up to, but I don't think he's going to be as good as him. I think he's still going to be a stud.
So yeah, those are the winners and losers of this year's trade deadline. We have 6 teams that went out there and went all in and figured out what they were going to do and their needs, and or I ended up trading away players, and we got 6 teams that kind of did nothing and really disappointed. Out of the teams that won the deadline, these 6 teams, which teams are you most looking out for to make a run at the playoffs?
Honestly, the Diamondbacks, with adding what they added, I think they can get to a wild card spot easily, or if not win the NL West. I mean, they add a lot that can help them out.
Yeah, and for me personally, I really think that the Angels, when Trout comes back, they can really make a run. I really like what they have. And I think that, like you said, they get hot at the right time. Their schedule is really, really tough going into this month, but they are playing some teams that are ahead of them in the wild card race and are competitive in the division. So if they're able to rattle off a couple wins against each team, win each series, I think they're going to be in great position to make a run of the playoffs. That's going to be it from us today on the 3-2 pitch. I hope you guys enjoy this. Aidan, thank you so much for coming on. Do you have any last thoughts for us?
Nope, just everyone enjoy the rest of the season, and we'll see where we wind up.
Yeah, so we'll hopefully have Aidan on another podcast and later on in the future, and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.
It's delicious.